Chapter 10. Let's Take a Ride. We're going to take a ride through time from Hampton all the way down to the tiny town of Asbury. We'll go straight downhill through town all the way to the bottom of town. When we get to the very bottom of the Hampton Hill, we'll make a left turn onto Valley Road. Valley Road was a beautiful, quiet, two-laned country road lined with trees. Our first stop on our right-hand side is the Hampton Park. It was a really nice park, bordered by a small river called the Musconetcong. As I remember, the park was almost always empty. We would coast our bikes down the steep hill to get there at blinding speed. Why? Why else? To have a good, honest BB gun fight. It was always a good idea to pile up on layers of clothing so you wouldn't get stung too badly by the BBs. When we got to the park, we would take up positions behind whatever was available for some kind of cover and start shooting. Now, of course, we had nothing for eye protection, but what's most unbelievable is we actually thought nothing of it. Even more astounding, no one got pegged in the eye. And we weren't easy on each other. If someone called time out, I'm out of BBs, you had to run out into the open to get a handful of BBs from someone else. Usually on the way back to cover you would get nailed a few times, probably by the one who just fronted you the handful of BBs. In the grand scope of things, there were worse things we could have been doing. And after all the cheap shots, pot shots, and merciless sitting duck shots, we would get back on our bikes and ride off just as good of friends as we were when we got there. So let's hop back on our bikes, make a right turn out of the park, back on the Valley Road. Down a few miles on the right-hand side was an old farmhouse that was where Ben's family lived before they moved up to the middle of town. One day, we pulled over and Ben took a gang of us for a tour of the old abandoned house. We just walked right in the unlocked front door. There it was, the whole house, empty and frozen in time. We walked through each room, from the kitchen, living room, on upstairs to the empty bedrooms. Everything was still intact. I've always found exploring abandoned places to be some of the best fun as a kid. I thought it was just the coolest thing. It was almost as if you could hear the voices and picture the family walking the halls. I can't quite put my finger on what makes abandoned places so exciting, but I think it's something we've all known as a kid, whether it be an old house, a building, a barn. I wonder if that house is still there. Getting back on our bicycles, fast forward a few more miles to the tiny town of Asbury, New Jersey. The town of Asbury was so small, I don't think it had maybe more than one stop sign. We would ride our bikes from Hampton to Asbury via Valley Road to jump off the Asbury Bridge into a part of the Musconetcong River. The only problem was the river passed right up along the Asbury graphite mill, and the graphite collected heavily in the water right where we jumped in. So once you jumped in, you would resurface shaded in black. Fortunately, there was no immediate danger of poisoning, but we didn't know any better. As far as we were concerned, other than jumping off the bridge, the town of Asbury's claim to fame was a rumor of Pat Benatar shooting a music video there. I believe it may have been Love is a Battlefield, a video story of a girl running away from her hometown and family to get to the big city. They didn't actually shoot the video in Asbury, but somewhere along the line someone heard about Pat Benatar shooting a video partially in Asbury Park, New Jersey, which was more than an hour drive and a world away. Signals got crossed and it got around that it was actually shot in Asbury. I even remember being at Ed's house one day watching MTV, and Ed's sisters, Wendy and Betty Jane, pointed out a house that they swore they recognized from Asbury in the video. I guess when you're in such a small town, you would hope something cool like a Pat Benatar video was filmed close by. But, sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Fast forward a couple more miles, and a few years later, Ben's first car was a Gran Torino, just like the one in the Clint Eastwood movie called Gran Torino. It was even the same color green and in great condition, for a short while. Ben had gotten the Torino, but was not quite 17 yet, so it remained parked in his parents' driveway until he had acquired his driver's license. In keeping with our tradition of joyriding anything we could get started, Ben decided to take the Torino out for a night. Here's a new one, joyriding your own car. So as usual procedure, we had to wait for it to be very late so the car could quietly be pushed out of the driveway and coasted a short distance before starting it. Everything seemed to go smoothly and Ben's Torino was up and running. Riding with him were my brother Brian and Kevin. At this point, I had already had my license and my first car, so we cruised with both cars. Down the Hampton Hill, left on Valley Road and on to Asbury, past the graphite mill, leaving town, you're quickly on dark back roads, which were at the time all dirt and gravel road that we traveled now and again. As Ben and company drove on ahead of me, I followed behind, and at some point I thought it would be funny to turn off my lights and follow him closely enough to see by his lights only. After a short stint of this, Ben hit the gas to leave me a short distance behind, with all the dust and rocks flying up off the road onto my car. The Torino had a huge, powerful engine in it, The kind of muscle where you just touch the gas pedal and the engine torques the whole car. So when Ben hit the gas on the gravel road, the car got away from him and hit a tree head on. I could barely see the car through all the road dust, but when it settled and I got out, it was clear the car had kissed the tree hard. Lights still on, steam pouring out of the broken radiator, front end pretty much well smashed in, and everyone inside was climbing out. Fortunately, he wasn't driving that terribly fast, so no one was seriously hurt, but the car suffered an ill fate. As everyone dived out of the Torino and into my car, Ben shouted, "Wait, get the plates, get the plates!" So we scrambled for a screwdriver in my trunk, and by my car's headlights, got the plates off the Torino in the dust and the smoke still coming from the radiator. Once the plates were off the Torino, we drove my car back to Hampton, and Ben went home to call his brother-in-law, who knew someone that was able to tow it out of there before anything was reported to the police. Another lucky break, not only for Ben, but everyone was able to go home and sleep unharmed in their own beds once again as the sun was coming up. Fast forward a couple more years and a few miles back onto Valley Road, there was a clearing on the left-hand side just hidden from the road. One summer night, in our cars, a bunch of us gathered there with a couple cases of beer. Not a usual hangout for us, but it was a nice spot and we were all having a good time underage drinking the night away. Besides the regular bunch, there was another guy, a couple years older than us, that joined the party. He drove a little brand new silver Toyota truck. It was at the time when the 5th generation Toyota trucks had taken off so wildly popular. At this time, I drove a huge 1972 green 4-door Chevy Impala with a big 350 motor. In my infinite stupidity, I thought it would be cool to challenge this guy's truck to a drag race. He accepted my challenge. From there, on the way to Asbury, was a straightaway of a couple miles or so that ended in a T in the road at a stop sign. Right off the bat, this was obviously a terrible idea to have the finish line be a stop sign at a T intersection. But I didn't think much of it because I was sure that my big American motor, if not off the starting line, would certainly smoke that little Toyota engine in a long haul. So we got out on the pavement, lined up, and someone did the countdown. 3, 2, 1, go. Off we went. Or should I say, off went the Toyota, and I made a turtle start behind it. He took off way faster than I anticipated. But I still had the long haul going for me, so I kept it floored. I never caught up to him. In fact, he stayed at least 4 or 5 car lengths ahead, but as I inched closer, I didn't want to give up. My top speed was somewhere around maybe 80 or 90, and I just kept the pedal down until I finally saw the brake lights ahead of me. As he slowed down, I tried all that much harder to squeeze every inch of the road out to catch him. I didn't want to slow down. I wanted to win. He hit the brakes at the last second and made the turn at the T in the road, winning the race. Here I come just a split second after. I passed him, blew through the stop sign, through the intersection, missed a power pole by inches at about 80, and drove directly into a rough-graded field. Not wearing a seatbelt, I lost hold of the steering wheel. I was bounced around the front of the car like a rag doll before the car finally came to a stop. Fortunately, the field was big. I climbed back into the driver's seat and was able to drive the car back up onto the road. Amazingly, the car was still running and drivable, not even so much as a flat tire. I got my wits about me and realized I was all alone out there on that dark road. The guy with the Toyota had turned around and driven back to the party way before I even made it out of the field. I drove back to the party slowly and perfectly sobered up from the adrenaline. I got out of the car and grabbed a beer. "Holy shit," I said. "I almost kissed that pole and died." The other driver responded with something I wasn't expecting. He said, "I know. I thought you hit it. I thought you were dead. That's why I came back." Upon his return, he also had plenty of time to share his report with everyone else at the party, and I didn't see anyone coming to look for me. When I finally arrived back, there was no fanfare. No "thank God you're alive," no "attaboy," and I just joined back in the drinking. It slowly crept in on me that maybe for some, I wasn't much more than a ride home afterward. After that night, I began to drift away from not all, but some of my so-called friends. I returned to the T intersection the next day by myself and saw the tire tracks skidding across the road, and was in awe of how close I really did come to that pole. I would have been dead on impact, and no seatbelt, surely I'd have been thrown through the windshield. And dead. And who would have cared? It was definitely one of those wake-up calls when you realize life goes on with or without you. You can easily make dumb decisions that can end your life. Most people realize this through natural instinct, but being I was born with a seedling of a brain that hadn't grown just yet, it's things like that that teach you the easy way or the hard way. Dying can be real and the world won't stop for you. As stupid as it was, such a close call did me a lot of good at the time. And sadly, not everyone in this book would have the chance to learn like I did and go on with their lives. I suddenly realized that if I could help it, I wasn't going to die or get hurt from just plain being stupid. Better late than never.